The Mimer we're going to learn is one of the two Maamarim that the Rebbe edited for Gimel Tamuz. The first Mimer, the previous Mimer that the Rebbe edited was in the year 1989, Tafshin Mem Tes. And that Mimer starts with the words, Asam Nafshenu B'chaim, that Hashem placed our souls in life. This Mimer, the Rebbe edited in the year Tafshin Nun, 1990. And the Mimer starts with the words, Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu kasher hayim aviseinu. Now, as we know, on Gimel Tammuz, the 3rd of Tammuz, in the year Tafresh Pei Zayin, 1927, is the day that the previous Rebbe was freed from jail, from his imprisonment in the Shpalerka prison in Leningrad. At that time, when the Frierdiker Rebbe was imprisoned, he was imprisoned for 18 days. And at that time, they wanted to put a death sentence. In fact, the Frierdiker Rebbe told when he left prison that he was able to see the paper that they had written. First they wrote to be shot, and they crossed it out. And then they wrote for 10 years of hard labor. And they wrote next to it, Niet, no. And then they wrote 3 years of Galus exile in Kostroma. And that's where the previous Rebbe left to the exile in Kostroma. And a week later, the previous Rebbe left on the 3rd of Tammuz, which was a Sunday. And he arrived in Kostroma on Tuesday, and the following from then, every Tuesday he was supposed to come with his papers to show at the police station that he's still there. And the next Tuesday, which was the 12th of Tammuz, which is also the birthday of the previous Rebbe, he came and showed his papers, and they said, you're free to go, but because it's a public holiday, you won't be able to leave until the 13th, until tomorrow, which was Wednesday, the 13th of Tammuz, when they actually freed him. A little bit of the history of the Gimel Tammuz starts with the fact that at the time when the previous Rebbe was in jail, and as we said, it was under the worst conditions. In fact, there were a time that they locked the Frierdiker Rebbe up for 24 hours in solitary confinement in a cell which was full up to almost his neck with mud and dirt and all types of things crawling inside it, as well as on the walls, so you couldn't even lean on the walls. And he was there for about 24 hours. And that was just one of the things. And they beat him, and he got very sick from it. They broke the metal of his belt that went then into his waist, etc., into his stomach, and many things of terrible suffering. Together with the fact that there was a death sentence that was upon him, and as long as he was in jail, there was a danger that he would die, that he would be killed, chas v'shalom. It came Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. That year, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz was Thursday and Friday. So the first day of Rosh Chodesh Tammuz was Thursday. Friday was the second day of Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos was Beis, and Sunday was the 3rd of Tammuz. On Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, they called in on Thursday. They called the Frierdiker Rebbe. They came and they told him, stand up. Now the general way that he did was whenever they told him to stand up, he didn't listen. They told him stand up. He said no. And they left. They came back again. They said stand up. And there was a Jewish guy that was there, who was one of the people that had been involved in putting the Frierdiker Rebbe in jail. And he said to Frierdiker Rebbe, Rebbe wird euch doch schlagen. They'll hit you. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, no. And so they hit the Frierdiker Rebbe, and they left. And they came back a third time, and they said, stand up. And the Frierdiker Rebbe again ignored them, or he said, nein, in Yiddish. Whenever they spoke to him in Russian, he answered in Yiddish. And there was a Jewish guy over there whose name was Kavlikov. And he got into such an anger. And he said, we'll teach you. He said in Russian, we'll teach you a lesson. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, depends who will teach you a lesson. And again, he hit the Frierdiker Rebbe so hard under his chin that he suffered from it for many years. Finally, they called the previous Rebbe, they called him into the office. And they told him, you're free to go. But tonight, this was in the morning, go home and pack your things. And tonight you have to go on the train to Kostroma, to the exile, the city of exile. And so the Frierdiker Rebbe asked, when will I arrive in Kostroma? And they said, Shabbos. This was Thursday night. He said, Shabbos morning you'll arrive. He said, Shabbos, I'm not traveling. So he said to Frierdiker Rebbe, if that's the case, we're not going to be able to let you out of jail. And in fact, one of the ones that were there said, I will make sure that you won't get out of this jail alive. And the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't say anything. And later the Frierdiker Rebbe said, Baruch Hashem, I remained in jail for an extra 2 days, and it was terrible suffering in jail. But Shabbos I didn't travel. Sunday was Gimel Tammuz, and again they allowed the Frierdiker Rebbe to go home and pack his bags. And that Sunday night he would travel to Kostroma. When he came to the station, there were Chassidim there who came to see the Frierdiker Rebbe off. And he began to speak to them in Yiddish. He said a sicha. Now the Russians, many of them were Jewish and understood Yiddish. And in the sicha, the Frierdiker Rebbe began with the words, Yehi, Hashem Elokeinu imanu. Kasher haya imaviseinu al yazveinu val yichenu. Hashem should be with us in the same way that He was with our ancestors. He shouldn't let us go, and He shouldn't forsake us. And the Frierdiker Rebbe continued to say that despite the fact that we are not the same as our ancestors, because our ancestors were Bali Mesirus Nefesh Bepeil Mamish, they had actual self-sacrifice for Torah and Yiddishkeit. And we don't have the strength, and we don't have the guts to stand up against a few wild Jewish children who are making all the problems. And we don't have the strength to stand up and say that according to the law we're allowed to study, we're allowed to learn, we're allowed to daven, we're allowed to, even for certain limitations, but we're allowed to keep Torah and mitzvahs. And at that time, the Frierdiker Rebbe continued to tell a story about one of our ancestors. And who was that? His father, the Rebbe Rashab. That in the time of the old government, in the Tsarist government, when they made they wanted to make a kinus rabbanim, they made a gathering of rabbis, and they were trying to implement certain changes in Jewish education, changes that all the rabbis felt would be detrimental to the proper Jewish education with Yiras Shamayim, with proper fear of heaven. The changes that they wanted were seemingly nothing major. All they wanted was that a rabbi, a teacher, someone who's going to teach Torah, has to first get a degree from a university, a degree in education. The problem was that the rabbis felt that if this happens and this decree goes through, then the people that will be able to teach will be people that don't have that proper amount of Yiras Shamayim in order to give uncompromising Torah education to the children. Nevertheless, the Russian government were threatening. And they threatened not with the lives of the rabbis that wanted to tell these things, not even with the lives of their families, but with pogroms. They threatened at that time, there used to be government-inspired pogroms, and they threatened, if you won't go along with us, there will be throughout Russia hundreds of pogroms. Now, a pogrom is not something which is threatening myself, and it's not my family, it's the entire Jewish community. And so the rabbis were afraid to speak. And when it came time for the rabbis to speak, the Rebbe Rashab, who was there at that meeting, said, let the Brisker Rav speak first. Let Reb Chaim Brisker, with whom the Rebbe Rashab was very friendly, let him speak first. And the Rebbe Rashab was hoping that the Brisker Rav will speak, and it will be easier to accept it because the Rebbe Rashab is considered more of a zealot. The Brisker Rav, Reb Chaim Brisker, was also afraid to say anything. And the Rebbe Rashab said, if the Brisker Rav won't say, then I'll say. And the Rebbe Rashab continued to say the following. It wasn't with our will that we left Eretz Yisrael. It wasn't willingly that we left Eretz Yisrael. And it will not be with our powers and our strength that will return to Eretz Yisrael. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, Hashem is the one who put us into exile, and He is the one who will have mercy upon us, and He will gather us together with the coming of Mashiach and bring us back to Eretz Yisrael. However, one thing must be known and clear to all nations of the world, and all governments wherever they may be, that it's only our bodies that were sent into Galus. Only our bodies were sent into exile. And with regards to the soul of a Jew, anything that has to do with Torah and mitzvahs, there is no one who can voice any opinion and no one can make any decisions with regards to Jewish education, with regards to things that have to do with Torah and mitzvahs. And we must say out loud without being afraid, Al tigu b'mshichai, do not touch my anointed ones, which are the Tinoikes shel Beis Rabban, the Jewish children, and the education of Jewish children must remain intact in the proper way, in the uncompromising way. When the Rebbe Rashab finished saying this, he fainted. And at that time, the Russians arrested, they put him under house arrest for the words that he said. The Rebbe Rashab was sitting in his hotel room where he was under house arrest. And Reb Chaim Brisker came to visit him because he wasn't feeling well. And he saw that the Rebbe Rashab was sitting on his porch and he was crying. And Reb Chaim Brisker said to the Rebbe Rashab, Lubavitch Rebbe, why are you crying? We did whatever we could. And the Rebbe Rashab said, however, what had to be accomplished wasn't accomplished. And the Rebbe explains an interesting thing, and this is something which will have to do with what we're learning now in the Mimer. That the difference between the approach of Reb Chaim Brisker and the approach of the Rebbe Rashab was that Reb Chaim Brisker's approach was that of a worker. A worker, when he does whatever he can and even goes beyond the letter of the law. He puts in extra hours, he does what he can, he's happy. He's able to rest and he's able to sleep. He has no problems. The boss, it doesn't matter how many hours he puts in extra, but as long as what he wants to be accomplished isn't accomplished, and the business isn't running the way he wants it to, he can't sleep at night. And the Rebbe explains that the Chaim Brisker came with the approach of a worker. The Rebbe Rashab came with the approach of a boss, of someone who's one with Hashem. And this is something which we're going to learn in this Mimer, exactly how that works, this concept of being one with Hashem. That it's this concept and it's this that brings such a Mesirus Nefesh, a type of Mesirus Nefesh, of self-sacrifice that the previous Rebbe showed then, that he was willing to sit a few extra days in prison and put his life in danger rather than travel on Shabbos. He was willing to put his life in danger rather than show the Russians that they have any power over him, who represents, the Jew represents Torah and mitzvahs. And he even, after coming out, had this same self-sacrifice of being prepared and ready to give himself over totally to speak in front of the Russians the words that they themselves are going to hear after he himself is still under their power, under their rule, and he's going into exile for spreading Torah and mitzvahs. And in the same manner, the Frierdiker Rebbe continued to say, we're not afraid of hard labor, and we're not afraid of prison, and we're not afraid of exile. Anytime you'll take a teacher and send them to prison and send them to hard labor, another teacher will go out. And these are the words he's saying in front of the communists who are putting him they're punishing him. And yet, what was the outcome when a Jew stands strong? Then not only did they allow him, but they allowed him to go free after a week instead of sitting there for three years. Let's look inside the Mimer and we'll see a little bit what's the meaning of that, and also the amazing lesson that there is from it also in our very time, and especially for the special date of Gimel Tammuz. So the Rebbe begins with the pasuk, Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu. Kasher ha'yim aviseinu, Hashem, our God, should be with us in the same manner that He was with our forefathers. Al yazveinu v'al yicheinu, He shouldn't leave us and He shouldn't forsake us. V'yedua sicha shel Baal Hagula shamar b'gimel Tammuz tafresh pei zayin. There is the known sicha, the known talk of the Baal Hagula, the one who was liberated on the 3rd of Tammuz, that he said on that date, on the 3rd of Tammuz, 1927, Tafresh Pei Zayin, Mir beten ba Hashem Yisbarach. He started with these words, Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu, and then he said, we are asking from Hashem. Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu, kasher hayem aviseinu al yazveinu val yicheinu. Hashem Yisbarach zol zayin mit uns. Hashem should be with us. Und wird sein mit uns, and He will be with us, kasher hayem aviseinu, in the same manner that He was with our ancestors, with our forefathers. That was the words with which the previous Rebbe began the Sikha. Hashem should be with us and will be with us. V'tzarich lahavin, we must understand. This the Rebbe is asking, Arei bakasha v'avtacha minyanim shenim. A request and a promise are two different concepts. And seemingly they're not only different things, but they're opposites. When we ask for something, that means I'm down here, I'm below, and I'm asking from the one that can do it, please do it for me. When I promise something, that means I'm in the position that I know and I'm able to promise. Two total opposite things that come from two totally different people. Someone who's asking is someone who doesn't know and who's not able to accomplish it. Someone who promises knows what's going to happen, and he's there in the know, and not only in the know, but he's the one who's actually in the place where he can give the promise because he can make things happen. And so here comes along the Previous Rebbe, and he says something very interesting. He says the following, Mir beten ba Hashem Yisbarach. We are entreating of Hashem. We are asking of Hashem. Zol zayin mit uns und vet zayin mit uns. He should be with us. That's part of the entreaty. And He will be with us. Shehabakasha, the request, He loy rak zol zayin mit uns, is not only I'm requesting that He should be with us, elo vet zayin mit uns, I'm requesting that He will be with us. But that doesn't make sense. You can't say that I'm requesting that He will be with us. I'm requesting that He should be with us. Will is a promise. V'agam shetevas yehi loshen bakasher v'gam loshen avtacha, even though in Hebrew, you could explain either explanation in the words of the pasuk. Yehi could mean Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu, which is a pasuk that Shlomo HaMelech said at the time when he finished and completed the building of the first Beis HaMikdash. At the time of the dedication of the first Beis HaMikdash, he said this. Now there's two ways of explaining it. Either Shlomo is saying, we're asking of Hashem, He should be with us, or He's giving a blessing, He will be with us. But it's either or, it can't be both together. So even though both explanations fit in the pasuk, there's two separate ways of explaining the pasuk, but you can't explain it in both ways together. And the sikha of the previous Rebbe includes both things together as if it's one thing. I'm asking that He should and will be with us. So that's the question that the Rebbe is asking, a very powerful question, that when we come to ask something, you can't ask He should be with us and will be with us. Umamshich ba'asicha. Then the Previous Rebbe continues in the Sikha. The fact that we say Hashem should be with us and will be with us, which is Yehi b'lashon bakasha, v'gam b'lashon avtach. It's both a request, something that we're entreating of Hashem, and a promise. This fact of He shall be or He should be, like He was with our ancestors, who Hagam mir seinen doch nicht gleich zu Aviseinu. The meaning of this is, even though we are not the same and we can't compare ourselves to our fathers, to our ancestors. Shleimar shamakar libiur zeh umadisa b'medrash. So now the Rebbe is explaining, where did the Previous Rebbe get this concept from, that when we say Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu, we mean that despite the fact that we can't be compared to our fathers, to our ancestors, nevertheless Hashem should still be with us. Where does that come from? It comes from the Medrash. The Medrash says, V'chein Shloimeh omer lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that King Shloimeh said before Hashem, Melech shu seicher pe'alim b'neisin melachtan yafeh, a king who hires workers, and they do the job properly. V'neisin lem scharan, and the king pays them, gives them their pay. Ma shevach ish lamelech. That's an obvious thing. That is not praiseworthy of the king, the fact that he pays when they deserve it. When is the king truly praiseworthy? When the king hires bad workers, or in another word, lazy workers. They don't do their job properly. And he still gives them their pay. And this is a great thing from the king's side. And it's about this that Shlomo HaMelech says the words, Yehi Elokeinu imanu kasher hayom aviseinu. Hashem should be with us in the same way He was with our forefathers, which means that Shlomo is saying that despite the fact that we are not like our forefathers, Hashem should still be with us in the same way that He was with our forefathers. So that's what the Previous Rebbe is saying, that when we say Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu kasher hayom aviseinu, we're saying that despite the fact that we're not like them, we don't have the same work, our job. What we're doing isn't on the same level as what they did, and yet we're still entreating of Hashem and asking of Hashem that He should still give us and be with us in the same manner that He was with them. And then the Previous Rebbe continues to explain in the Sikha. The fact that we're not able to compare ourselves to our ancestors, to our forefathers, because our ancestors, they had actual mesirus nefesh, ala teira v'mitzvos, or teira and mitzvahs. They had actual self-sacrifice. And we don't have it. And like the Previous Rebbe said there in the Sikha, we don't have even the guts to get up and say the truth about the few wild Jewish children that are making all the problems. And yet our forefathers, they did have mesirus nefesh v'teira and mitzvahs. Tzarich love, and now we have to understand. Haramir asicha zu haisa b'kesher im nisiyase legalus kastrama. The Previous Rebbe said this sikha in connection with his travel to the exile in Kastrama. Shagalus v'lifnei za'amaiser haya biglal mesirus nafshe b'peil ala teira v'mitzvahs. His exile and earlier his imprisonment came as a result of his self-sacrifice in actuality for Torah and mitzvahs. Moreover, even the fact that he said this sikha in front of the Russians when they understand what he's saying, and he's still under their rule, that's also an actual self-sacrifice in the highest way. And nevertheless, The Previous Rebbe is still saying that we can't compare ourselves to our forefathers who are Bali Mesiras Nefesh. What do you mean? He's having Mesiras Nefesh. He just coming out of the most terrible jail and incarceration that he sat for spreading Torah and mitzvahs. He's now standing in front of the Russians and calling their bluff. And yet he says, we can't compare ourselves. We're not the same as our forefathers, and yet we're still asking from Hashem that He should still be with us in the same way that He was with them. So the Rebbe continues to say that l'cheira yishleimar, seemingly we can explain it. The kivan shebakashas balagula yavai Elokeinu imanu hoisa loy rak avur atzmai elagam avur kol Yisrael, being that the request of the balagula of the previous Rebbe, when he asked, let Hashem be with us, was not just for himself, but it was with us in plural, meaning for the entire Jewish nation. Including those for whom the name Israel was only like a nickname. It's like an added name. It's not their essential name because they don't express their essence with the name Yisrael. It's like an added thing for them. Therefore, since he's saying it for every single Jew, regardless whom, that's why he's saying the Jewish people as a whole are not compared to our forefathers, and yet we're still asking of Hashem He should be with all of us in the same way He's with our forefathers. So that's a seeming explanation, which in a certain way does have truth to it. Nevertheless, it still doesn't suffice. It's not sufficient, this explanation. The words that the previous Rebbe said, we are not the same and can't be compared to our forefathers. He was included himself because he said we. Can't answer. Well, he was being humble. And that's why he's talking about everyone. He's including himself in them. He's putting himself together with everyone else because of humility. Humility doesn't come when it's totally and completely not even something that can be fathomed as truth. Here he's standing and having self-sacrifice of the greatest type, and to say we're not people who have self-sacrifice like our ancestors, that's not even humility because it's so far from the truth. So that's what the Rebbe is speaking. First of all, the Rebbe is asking a question. Why does the previous Rebbe say that that he's asking and at the same time promising? And he's asking a promise. You can't ask a promise. That means it doesn't seem to work. And number two, why does the previous Rebbe say, just like Shlomo HaMelech who said, that even though we can't compare ourselves to our forefathers and our ancestors. Says now the previous Rebbe, we also can't compare ourselves in the Mesiras Nefesh, in the self-sacrifice that they had, which we don't have it. And yet we're asking Hashem to please be with us nonetheless in the same way He was with them. But the Previous Rebbe is including himself as one of the ones who doesn't have that level of self-sacrifice. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. How's that possible? How can he be saying this? And now the Rebbe continues going with another question. Vine, Neisav ladiyukim sheba'asichon tzarich biur ba'lashin hiya v'Elokeinu imanu sheba'kasav atzmei. Besides, for the above-mentioned two questions that there are on the talk of the Previous Rebbe, on the previous Rebbe's explanation, the way he explained the pasuk, we can also ask a question on the words of the pasuk itself. Seemingly, we said, who are we talking about? Hashem, our God. Shehu Elei Kashelanu, meaning He's our God. Ubifrat la mevur b'chsidis she'Elokeinu pirush keichenu v'chayusenu. Especially as Chassidus explains that what does the word Elokeinu mean? Eloka means strength and power, Elokeinu, our God, means He is our strength and our sustenance, meaning He is our entire essence. That's what it means when we say Elokeinu, that Hashem is our entire existence. He's the one who gives us power. He's the one who sustains us. So you already said that He is Elokeinu. Why do we have to still request He should be with us? He is everything. He is our strength. He is our sustenance. It's obviously that He's with us at every moment. He's everything of our lives. Why do you still need to ask that He should be with us? So this is a question on the pasuk, on the request of Shlomo HaMelech. V'gam tzarich love. And another question is, the fact that we use the words imanu with us and with our fathers, the lashon im neifel al davar shu tafel al davar shu imai. When we say the word im with, that means the thing that's with something else is secondary to the thing that it's with. And the Rebbe gives over here an example from the Mishnah, Kemoi, Yachleiku Yershei Habal im Yershei Av. The Mishnah in Yevamis, where it discusses inheritance, where there's an inheritance of a woman who was a Shemeres Yavam. She didn't yet get married to her Yavam, to her brother-in-law, the one to her brother-in-law who when her husband passed away without children, so she has to marry his brother, but she didn't yet marry him, and she dies. So when she dies, the question is her ksuba and other things of hers, who inherits her? So we say that Yershei Habal, Yachloiku Yershei Habal im Yershei Av, the inheritors of her first husband who had passed away, together with those who are the Yarshim of her father, they should split. Now when we say split, that means that mostly and mainly everything goes to her Yershei Av, because she already left her original husband. Now all of her inheritance goes to her father. So it's the Yershei Av that are the main ones, and the Yershei Abal come with them. So that's the concept that we say, She Yershei Abalim Tfeilim Li Yershei Av. Those who inherit from the husband, the ones who are supposed to get from her husband are secondary to the ones who are supposed to get from her father. But the concept is that when we say the word im, the Hebrew word im in Lashon HaKodesh means with, meaning that it's secondary. The main thing, like over here, is the Yershei Av. The secondary thing is the Yarshim, those who receive from the husband. So now, the same thing over here, what are we saying? Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu, kasher haya im aviseinu. Hashem should be with us, meaning it's as if we're saying Hashem is secondary to us. He's secondary to our fathers, to our ancestors. And just as He was secondary, He was with them, meaning He was secondary to them, He should be also secondary to us. How can we say such a thing? Hashem is the main thing. He's the one who gives us the koyach. He's the one who gives us the chayes, sustenance. He's everything. How can we call Him im with us as if He's secondary to us? And the Rebbe explains it, the second question first. We can explain to this based on the fact that it's known. Why is it that with regards to Yiras Shamayim, to fear of heaven, there's usually the words that are used in the pasuk is Oitzar Shel Yiras Shamayim, and as well as in the Gemara when it discusses a treasure house of Yiras Shamayim. Why do we use the word treasure house? Just as a treasure house of a king. Ein biyad hamelech lasis oitzar. Im lo yikabitz me'achedim. Where does a king get treasures from, which he keeps in his safe, in his treasure house? Things that he got from others. He receives it from his father and his grandfather and his ancestors, the kings before him. Or he gets it from the people of the country when they pay taxes, etc. The treasures of the king come from others. Similarly, Kain Hayira, so also fear of Hashem, which that's called a tzarei. Shel Melech Malchi Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the treasure of the King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Eina bidei shamayim, this fear of heaven is not in the hands of heaven, Mimer Azal, and as the sages tell us, Hakoil bidei shamayim chutz miyiras shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven except and besides for the fear of heaven. So since the fear of heaven is something that comes from us, so with regards to the fear of heaven, we call it a treasure, meaning it's the treasure of Hashem. Who gives it, we give it. Why? Because Hashem decided that. It's not, God forbid, that He doesn't have the power. Hashem has the power for everything. But when Hashem created the world, He made it in a way that it's as if that Yiras Shamayim is something that He has no say over, He has no power over it. It has to be completely in the hands of a human being. Everything is in the hands of Hashem except for fear of heaven, which comes in the hands of the person. It's something which Hashem wants the person to do it. So in order to have this Yiras Shamayim, it's like a treasure house. It has to come from others. It has to come from the people that give it. And now the Rebbe continues, V'yesh lehesif, and we can add that Tam al Shaloshin Oitzar. Nemar biyira dafka. What's the reason for the fact that the words Oitzar, a treasure, is said specifically with regards to fear of heaven? Hagam she'inyin zeh shakadosh baruch hu tzarich kavyachal la'adam hu b'chal ha'mitzvahs, even though in truth this concept that Hashem, so to speak, needs man is in all the mitzvahs. Why? Ki b'chdei she'yiyeh kiyum ha'mitzvahs k'deboi hu al yidei avas Hashem al yidei yiras Hashem. Meaning that in essence, all the mitzvahs are something which it depends on the person. We have to do the mitzvahs. Hashem doesn't do a mitzvah for us. And it's interesting that this is also connected, if we wish, with this idea of the Beis HaMikdash itself. When it came to the Beis HaMikdash is a mitzvah to build the Beis HaMikdash. Who builds the Beis HaMikdash? Hashem wants a dwelling place here in this world. And He says, how do I get this dwelling place? Ve'asu li mikdash v'shochanti b'seicham. I'm giving a mitzvah that you should create, you should build for me a mikdash, a sanctuary, and I will rest then amongst them, amongst you, amongst the Jewish people. Hashem says, I want this dira, the dwelling place for me, to be created by human beings who are, in a manner of speaking, a separate entity from Hashem, and it's they who will create an existence of a place where Hashem can rest His presence. That's the whole purpose of creation, and it's brought out specifically in the Beis HaMikdash. All the mitzvahs that a Jew does are in order to make a dwelling place for Hashem. They have to be done by a Jew, by a person who's, in a manner of speaking, he's a separate entity from Hashem. And it's the same thing with the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was now being built by Shlomo HaMelech. Hashem wants a place to live. And Hashem says, where am I going to live? Comes along Shlomo HaMelech and he says, Hashemayim u'shmei Hashemayim leichal kalucha. The heavens above and the heavens, the highest heavens, can't contain you. Afki abayis hazeh, what will be only this small home? But what does He say? Hashem Amar lishkin barafel. Hashem decided He is going to reside in this place. And it's something which doesn't make sense. It's like a rafel, it's like darkness. It makes no sense. It's like the clouds. That Hashem should rest in this small little physical place. And not only that, He wants us to build a place for Him. Comes along Shlomo HaMelech now and says, Yehi Hashem Elokeinu imanu kasher hayim aviseinu. Hashem should be with us, just as He was with our forefathers. Our forefathers with their actions. When they built a Mishkan for Hashem, and Hashem resided there. When they built a Mishkan in Shiloh, first in the Midbar, and then in Gilgal, and then in Shiloh, and then in Nev and Given, Hashem resided and rested His presence there. When David HaMelech brought the Aron into Yerushalayim, Hashem resided, rested His presence. Says Shlomo, we're not as worthy as they are. But we want Hashem to rest in the handiwork of our hands. He should be with us. In our actions, in what we do, that He should be with us as a cause, as a result of our action. And that's why even the third Beis HaMikdash, which is built, it's Binyana de Kuchabrich, was built by Hashem, and yet we know that the Rambam says, and the Rebbe reconciles, that they both go together, the opinion of the Rambam, that the Beis HaMikdash will be built by Mashiach, and the opinion of Rashi and Tosfos and the Zohar that will be built by Hashem, that in fact we need both. We also have to put our involvement even into the building of the third Beis HaMikdash by learning about the Beis HaMikdash, and eventually also through the concept of Mashiach building the Beis HaMikdash and us being involved, and then Hashem putting inside it His own heavenly Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because it's a mitzvah, we have to do it. And that's the Iman. Hashem comes secondary to us. It's in our actions that Hashem rests His presence. Now, nevertheless, despite the fact that all the mitzvahs, Hashem is, so to speak, secondary, Hashem comes as a result of us doing the mitzvahs on our own. We have a test, and we have to overcome our Yetzer Hara. We have to decide that we're going to do, we have free choice to decide to do the right thing. And that's how Hashem's presence rests there. Nevertheless, the word oitzer, treasure, is said specifically with regards to Yiras Shamayim, to fear of heaven. And the reason for this is because in order to fulfill any mitzvah properly that comes through Avas Hashem or through Yiras Hashem, through love of Hashem or through fear of Hashem. And the word treasure is said specifically with regard to fear. Why? One of the differences between love of Hashem and fear of Hashem is the Avas Hashem bo'al yidei gili ein milamayla. The love of Hashem comes through the revelation of light that comes from above. V'yiras Hashem ba bi'ikir al yidei avedas ha'adam. Whereas Yiras Hashem, fear of Hashem, comes mostly through the avodah of a person. So even Avas Hashem, which is also something which we inspire, but yet in order to inspire ourselves with the love of Hashem, we need to have the help from above. It comes as a result of Hashem's arousing it. But Yiras Hashem, the fear of Hashem, that must come mostly through what a person does. It can't be inspired from above. Valderech, and the example for this is similar to Yiras Melech Basar V'dam, the fear that one has of a flesh and blood king, of a physical king. The fact that the people of the country are afraid of the king. That's as a result of the fact that they accepted him to be their king. And the proof is, a person is not afraid of a king from a different country. The king of a different country, even though he's a king, person doesn't have the same fear and awe as he has of his king. Why does he have this special fear and awe of his king? Because he accepted him to be the king. The Kabbalah Samalchusu al Yidei Ha'am, the acceptance of the kingship comes through the people, the nation. Saim Tasim Alecha Melech, place upon yourself a king, and like the Chazal explained, that it means Shetei Masi Alecha, you place him upon you, that you have his fear upon you, but that's something which you have to accept it. Now we can also explain what the words of Hashem should be with us, just as he was with our ancestors. In the fear of Hashem, which that's the root, the beginning of all of the mitzvahs. The main thing is a person creating within himself this fear of Hashem. And the revelation of light that comes from above. It's only helping the person, it's only with us. So now the Rebbe answered two questions that he asked on the Pasuk. The first question was, once we say already that Hashem is Elokeinu, He's our God. And specifically, according to way Chassidus explains it, He's not just our God, but He is Koicheinu v'chayuseinu. He is our entire life. He is our entire sustenance. He's the one who empowers, who gives us all strength. So why do we have to then say He should be with us? He's already everything. He is us. He's everything that we have. Question number 2 was, why do we say He should be with us as if He's secondary to us? He's everything. We are secondary. And so the Rebbe explains both things based on the fact that there's certain things that a person has to do, and that's the way Hashem put it in the creation, that in order to make a dwelling place for Hashem, in order to do the mitzvahs, which have to be done by a person who's a human being down here who has a Yetzer Hara and he chooses to do the mitzvahs, as if he's a separate entity and he chooses to make a dwelling place for Hashem down here. How does that happen? As a result of him arousing within himself the fear and awe of Hashem, which that's the basis and the source and the root of the ability to fulfill all the mitzvahs. In this aspect, it's something which Hashem is looking to us, to our action, and He comes and He's secondary to us. And that's what we're saying. Yehi Hashem Elokeinu, He's our God, He's our strength. And yet we're still asking that He's our strength, which is something that comes from above. That's still not enough, but He should also be Imanu. He should come and be together with us, secondary to our action, because it's our action that makes that inspiration possible that comes from Hashem. Now the Rebbe continues to say, V'hinei hatam al zeh sha'yira ba b'ikar al yidei avedas ha'adam. What's the reason for the fact that the fear of Hashem comes specifically through a person's actions? Yesh leimar. Why is it that it's a person that has to inspire with himself fear, whereas love, for example, comes sometimes mostly from an inspiration from above? Whereas fear and awe is something that a person has to implement, a person has to bring it into himself. Hu yesh leimar ki yira hi bittul. Yira, fear and awe of Hashem, is one and the same with bittul, self-nullification and subjugation to Hashem. Ubefrat yiras hamelech, and especially the fear of a king. Same tasim alecha melech, shetehei masi alecha, place upon yourself a king, that his fear should be upon you. Shabitul di yirazu kashur imzeshu avdei shalamelech. The self-nullification that is connected with this fear is connected with the fact that the person is a servant of the king. The teva ha'eved hu she'emas upachad adin olav. The nature of a servant is that he has upon himself the fear and awe of his master. Shabitul de eved ubitul bitachlis. The bittul of a servant is a complete and full bittul, a full subjugation. He completely gives himself over to his master. And that's why it has to come specifically through the person. Why? Something that happens to a person through the revelation of the energy and light from above. Like we said, love or such that comes through arousal and energy from above. This type of action and effect, hu kimei davar neisaf alav. It's like an added thing to the person. There's the person and there's the inspiration that he gets from above. And therefore the change that the person becomes changed through this inspiration from above is only in his siyur, it's only in his specific form, it's only in the specific manner that he operates, it's only in different aspects of him which are limited to those specific, they're defined by the aspects that they are. It's not in the essence of the person himself, of Allah shinu ba'adam atzma. He didn't change the person because there's the person. From above, he's inspired. It gave him something which inspires him and gives him power and sustenance to do, to act, to love. But it didn't change him. Uvichdei sheyavei lebittul b'tachlis, in order for the person to come to a complete bittul, which that is bittul the eved, a bittul of a servant. Sha'achiluk bein ben chayrin le'eved u'be'etzem mitziyusei. The difference between a free man and a servant who's subjugated to his master. This bittul that the servant has to his master is his entire essence is given over to his master. Hu al yidei she'adam atzmei mekabel olav liyisavdei shel hamelech. This can only come as a result of the fact that the person himself accepts upon himself to be the servant of the king, because he has to accept it so that he should become the servant. He becomes then totally and completely given over, that becomes his essence. Whereas if it came from above, it wouldn't be his essence. Now the Rebbe continues, V'yesh leimar, now it can be said, Shal derech zo b'mesidus nefesh, that it's the same thing with regards to self-sacrifice, mesidus nefesh, a person giving himself over completely. The kivan shemesidus nefesh hu bittul b'tachlis, giving oneself over is a complete bittul. Ubefrat kshamesirus, because it means giving up one's life or giving up one's will and desire. Ubefrat kshamesirus nefesh yalin yanim kaele. Shal pidin sivui de lemaila ein mechuyev limser nafshe aleihem, especially when that mesirus nefesh is one which, based on the law, the command from above, he's not obligated to be meiser nefesh, to give up his life for it, such as we have at length in the Rambam and the Raivid, a discussion with regards to certain things where the Torah tells you that you should rather transgress them rather than being killed. And yet there's certain ways that even the Rambam will agree. And there's certain other ways that the Ramban and others say that a person has the ability and the right, even when he's commanded by Hashem, that he doesn't have to give his life up, or that he shouldn't give his life up. And despite the fact that the Rambam says that in this case it's called and considered to be suicidal, and yet even the Rambam in certain ways agrees that there's a way that a person can still do it, and certainly the Kesef Mishnah and bringing from the Ramban, etc., that a person is called holy if he does that, meaning he's not even doing something that he was commanded from above. In a certain way he was told not to. It's not something that he gets the power for doing, because when Hashem commands a person to do something, he also gives him the strength for it. Here it's something that the person chose completely on his own. It's a complete bittul that he gave himself over on his own. So therefore, in this case, that he's doing something that he's not even commanded to do it, which this was the situation with the Mesiras Nefesh of the Previous Rebbe, that he was giving his life up even for things that there's no command to. Therefore, it mostly comes not through a revelation of a light from above, but it comes from the person giving his life up. So when we're dealing with the bittul of Mesiras Nefesh, similar to the bittul of Yira that we said you have to become the servant of the king, it's something where you're completely giving yourself over. In a similar fashion, when it comes to a person giving his life up, and especially it's something where he's not obligated, it's something where he gives himself totally over. Based on that, we can also now understand the Hidyaser even more than this. More, we can understand even more powerfully the fact Shabakasha Vatfila de Bala Giula Basicha de Gimel Tammuz, why the request and the prayer of the Bala Gula of the previous Rebbe and his Sicha on Gimel Tammuz. Hoysa Beloshin HaKasuv Yehi Avay Elokeinu Imanu Kasher Haya Im Aveseinu, why he used the words of Shlomo Melech of the Pasuk. May Hashem be with us, just as he was with our forefathers. He was speaking about the Aveda of Mesiras Nefesh, of self-sacrifice. And this itself, he was talking about many things that according to halacha, according to something that comes from Hashem from above, the person's not obligated to give his life over for it. This comes mostly from the person himself. And being in that in this avodah of Mesiras Nefesh, the main thing is the person's work. And the revelation of light, the energy that comes from above, is only helping the person in his work, because the work itself has to come from the person. His bittul, his giving himself over. And specifically, he's giving himself over when he's not even told to do it. That's why the Previous Rebbe started his request and his prayer with the words of the pasuk, "May Hashem be with us," meaning secondary to us. So here the Rebbe explained that the reason why yira, fear and awe of Hashem, has to come from the person is because that's the concept of accepting the king upon oneself. That's something that the person has to do. Why? Because accepting a king is a bittul of an eved, becoming a servant of the king. That means my entire existence is that I'm a servant of the king. That's not something that can be done from above. That's something that the person has to create and make that happen to himself. And that's why it has to come from the person. In addition to this, the Rebbe explains that this is the same thing also with regards to Mesiras Nefesh. Giving one's life up, and especially with regards to something which is totally not commanded from above, is something which the person can't get that from Hashem. The person himself has to give it, has to do it and act, and Hashem is sort of helping the person secondary to the person. And that's why the Previous Rebbe here in this sikha, where he's talking about Mesiras Nefesh and ideas and concepts which the person himself doesn't even have to, and therefore he's saying the words Imanu, Hashem should be with us, secondary to us, because it's something that comes only secondary to the avodah of the person.